नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। So, Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya. Today we will be looking at the epilogue of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Having finished 8 books of the Buddha and his Dhamma, now we are coming to the end of the Buddha and his Dhamma. But the remaining part is also, as I said, is very important to look into and study. So, what we are going to do today is to study the epilogue of the Buddha and his Dhamma from the context of the prologue that has been written by Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And the prologue, I'm going to read it slowly and then I'm going to ponder over some of the things, because the prologue came at the beginning of the book and the epilogue is at the end of the book. So it's like, introducing the book, and then after having written at length about the topic in hand or what one proposed in terms of the vision or direction in the prologue, how does that end in the epilogue? So I'm going to try to connect two things today, epilogue and the prologue. So before we venture into reading the epilogue, I'm going to look at the prologue. So it's a long paragraph which I'm going to read, and please pay attention because very important for understanding the Buddhism. So the prologue goes like this: from time to time, men find themselves forced to reconsider current and inherited beliefs and ideas. So every time, we need to revise, reconsider the current and inherited beliefs and ideas. That's what the Buddha said, that don't accept something because it's coming from the tradition, because it's coming from the past. To gain some harmony between present and past experience. So we need to get harmony between what has gone by in terms of the past and the present, and to reach a position which shall satisfy the demands of feelings and reflection and give confidence for facing the future. So you see why we need to do this, why we need to reconsider the current and inherited beliefs and ideas, is because to get the harmony between the present and past experiences and to reach a position which shall satisfy the demands of feelings and reflection. The word here is reflection. And give confidence for facing the future. So in order to face the future, we need to reconsider the current and inherited beliefs and ideas. If at the present day, religion as subject of critical and scientific inquiry, so the religion in the present time is subjected to what is called a critical or scientific inquiry of both practical and theoretical significance, has attracted increasing attention. So the inquiry into the study of religion has now entered into a practical requirement. And this can be ascribed to why this is happening, why the religion is being questioned or inquired into. And Baba Ambedkar says, why is this happening? Because of the following reasons. So what are the reasons? One, A, the rapid progress of scientific knowledge and thought. So that's the number one reason that the religion is being reconsidered. The ideas are being reconsidered, rethought, reviewed. And why the reason for review, this revision has been given by Baba Ambedkar, that we need to do it in order to face the future. So why is this so? Because one, the rapid progress of scientific knowledge and thought. B, the deeper intellectual interest in the subject matter. So a lot of people are taking deeper intellectual interest in the subject matter of religion. C, the widespread tendencies in all parts of the world to reform or reconstruct religion, or to even replace it by some body of thought more rational and scientific or less superstitious. So this is what is happening in the present time, to look into religion as, to reform it, to reconstruct it, or even to replace it by some body of thought more rational and scientific or less superstitious. And finally, D, the effect of social, political, and international events of a sort which in the past have both influenced and been influenced by religion. So 4 reasons that why the religion is, the ideas and the beliefs of the religion needs to be reconsidered. So number one is because of the rapid development in the scientific knowledge and thought. Nowhere in the human history such kind of the scientific knowledge and scientific thought was unfolding. Secondly, there has been a tendency, the deeper intellectual interest in the religious matter, in the matter of religion, and then replace it by something scientific, more rational. And D is the effect of the social, political, and international events. So whenever the ethical or moral value of activities or condition is questioned, the value of religion is involved. Very, very significant. This statement is very significant. Whenever the ethical or moral value of activities or conditions is questioned, the value of religion is involved. And all the deep stirring experiences invariably compel a reconsideration of the most fundamental ideas, whether they are explicitly religious or not. So, we should, whenever there is a sea change in any domain of knowledge, the fundamental ideas are questioned, the fundamental ideas are challenged. And that's how the whole paradigm is shifted. So ultimately, there arise problems of justice, human destiny, God, and the universe. And these in turn involve problems of the relation between religious and other ideas. See, the religious ideas and other ideas needs to be compared. The validity of ordinary knowledge and practical conception of experience and reality. So you see, this prologue is drawn from Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, volume number 10, page number 669. So why, this is not written by Baba Ambedkar. He has taken it from the Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics. And I have seen those volumes, and it's very vast volumes. And what is prominent here is this: at that point of time, or even today, these questions or these conditions are valid, isn't it? So we need to reconsider the inherited beliefs, inherited ideas in the light of the present to create the harmony, to face the future. And there are a lot of developments which were not there, which are forcing one to reconsider or rethink the religion. And with this prologue, Dr. Baba Ambedkar has began the Buddha and his Dhamma, and we have gone through all the 8 books of the Buddha and his Dhamma, and we came to the end, which is the epilogue. So the epilogue, like binds together the prologue, the total 8 books. So that's how the epilogue is considered to be of tremendous import and importance. So this is tribute to the Buddha's greatness. So the epilogue is a final statement on the book, and so final statement is always important to understand why it is done. What is the purpose of doing it? So this epilogue is divided into 3 subsections. Tributes to the Buddha's greatness, number 1. A vow to spread his Dhamma, number 2. A prayer for his return to his native land. So what I'm going to do today is to go through the first section, and subsequently we will go to the second and third. So today I'm going to read through the tributes to the Buddha's greatness, and then we will reflect on, because it's very deep sort of a thing. This is a testimony of a lot of people who are scholars, scientists, Buddhist students, and so on and so forth. So let's begin reading it. 1. Tributes to the Buddha's greatness. The Buddha was born 2,500 years ago. So there is a difference of our time, and now it's more than 50 years. So we can say 2,550 years ago. And a lot of things have changed. The Buddhist studies have changed. The knowledge about the Buddha's Dhamma has gone, a very radical inquiry, and the Buddhism is now studied in the laboratories and so on and so forth, in terms of how the meditation affects mind. And the models of consciousness which are emerging, have been compared to the models of mind proposed by the Buddhists, and so on and so forth. So the last 50 years have had been a remarkable journey for Buddhism. But nevertheless, at the time of Baba Ambedkar, there was a great stride in the Buddhist studies as well. So the Buddha was born 2,500 years ago. What do modern thinkers and scientists say of him and his Dhamma? An anthology of their thoughts on the subject will be useful. So number 3, Professor S.S. Raghavachar. So this is what Professor S.S. Raghavachar says. 1. The period immediately antecedent to the life of the Buddha was one of the darkest ages in the history of India. See, the Buddha, before the emergence of the Buddha in the subcontinent, it was considered to be the dark age, and not only the dark age, the darkest age. And elsewhere, Baba Ambedkar has shown how dark it was. How it was. We can see the description of that dark age in the revolution and counter-revolution. And Raghavachar professor says further, it was intellectually a backward age. The thought of the time was characterized by an implicit veneration for the authority of the scriptures. Morally, it was a dark age. Morality meant for the believing Hindus the correct performance of rites and ceremonies enjoined in the holy texts. The really ethical ideas like self-sacrifice or purity of will, we did not find appropriate positions in the moral consciousness of the time. This is the idea of sacrifice was there, but that sacrifice was there for gaining something from the so-called God who live in the heaven. And the Buddha also taught sacrifice, but he taught the sacrifice of the self. And he taught it very forcibly that, if we want to bring the better world, we need to be able to sacrifice ourselves. And the idea of a sacrifice is so powerful in Buddhism in terms of sacrificing the self. That idea never existed before. And that's what Professor Raghavachar is mentioning here, that the really ethical ideas like self-sacrifice or purity of will did not find appropriate positions in the moral consciousness of the time. So that's what Professor Raghavachar is saying. So do you want to discuss after every comment, or should we do it at the end? Any ideas?
So whatever you feel better, sir.
Because I think in these 4, 5, 6 verses, there is a lot which we can talk about, because before the advent of the Buddha,
and after the sentence wise. Explain it sentence wise.
No, I think it's very self-explanatory, because I think what Professor Raghavachar is saying here in terms of the Buddha and the emergence of before the emergence of the Buddha, what kind of a society India had, and what Buddha did. He, in verse number 8, the really ethical ideas like self-sacrifice or purity of will did not find appropriate positions in the moral consciousness of the time. So that was the condition of the Indian society before the advent of the Buddha. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So anything you want to comment on this? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points here? If not, then I will go and read further.
We'll discuss afterwards.
Okay. So the point number 9, Mr. R.J. Jackson says. So what does Mr. R.J. Jackson says? The unique character of the Buddha's teaching is shown forth in the study of Indian religious thought. The unique character. So now what Professor Jackson talks about, the unique character of the Buddha's teaching. In the hymns of the Rig Veda, we see man's thought turned outwards, away from himself, to the world of the gods. Now, this is a very important point. Buddhism directed man's search inwards to the potentiality hidden within himself. Now, this statement by R.J. Jackson is very important. It's very, very important. Before the advent of the Buddha, in the hymns of the Rig Veda, we see man's thoughts turned outwards, away from himself, to the world of the gods. Buddhism directed man's search inwards to the potentiality hidden within himself. So that's a very profound sort of a comment on Buddhism, that, the Buddha was the first to direct our search inwards into our own minds to the potentiality hidden within himself. In the Vedas, we find prayer, praise, and worship. Compared to that, in Buddhism, for the first time, we find training of the mind to make it act righteously. You see, so the Buddha, for the first time, in the history of the world, we would say, taught what is called the training of the mind. So before that, only prayers, rituals, sacrifice, fire sacrifice, and so on and so forth. And when the Buddha emerged, for the first time, we find training of the mind to make it act righteously. Now, Winwood Reed says, It is when we open the book of nature. It is when we read the story of evolution through millions of years, written in blood and tears. It is when we study the laws regulating life, the laws productive of the development, that we see plainly how elusive is the theory that God is love. Okay, this is what Winwood Reed says. In everything there is wicked profligate and abandoned waste. Of all animals that are born, only a very small percentage survives. Eat and be eaten is the rule in the ocean, the air, the forest. Murder is the law of growth. Okay, that was how it was. This is what Reed says in his Martyrdom of Man. And how different is the Dhamma of the Buddha? So you see, the Buddha, Baba Ambedkar is comparing what Winwood Reed says about the growth or development or the progress or the history of a mankind or even animals in terms of how it was, total waste, and only a few survived, and eat and be eaten is the rule in the ocean, the air, and the forest. You see, so if you look at the evolution from the evolutionary point of view, this has been the law. To eat and be eaten is the rule in the ocean, the forest, and the air. Murder is the law of growth. Now, if we look at the Buddhism, it says that the law of growth is not killing each other. The law of growth is love. The law of growth is metta. The law of growth is karuna. The law of growth is mudita. The law of growth is upekka. The law of growth is ahimsa. And this is very significant. How the Buddha's Dhamma is different. It almost going against the stream, making the humanity more profound, more, on a solid path to development. This is what Dr. Ranjan Roy says. Now it's what Dr. Ranjan Roy says. Throughout the second half of the 19th century, the three laws of conservation held sway. Nobody challenged them. So Dr. Ranjan says this. They were the laws of matter, mass, and energy. They were the trump cards of those idealists who cherished the thought of their being indestructible. 19th century scientists professed them as the governing factors of creation. 19th century scientists professed them as constituting the fundamental nature of the universe. They conceived that the universe was filled with indestructible atoms. Just as the 19th century was drawing to a close, Sir J.J. Thomson and his followers began to hammer the atom. Surprisingly enough, the atoms began to break into fragments. These fragments came to be called electrons, all similar and charged with negative electricity. Atoms held by Maxwell as imperishable foundation stones of the universe or reality broke down. They got broken into tiny particles, protons and electrons, charged with positive and negative electricity respectively. The concept of a fixed, unalterable mass abandoned science for good. In this century, the universal belief is that matter is being annihilated at every instant. The Buddha's doctrine of anicca, transient, is confirmed. This is what Professor Ranjan Rai says, that this is how the Buddha's doctrine of anicca, transitoriness, is confirmed. Science has proved that the course of the universe is a grouping and dissolution and regrouping. The trend of modern science is the trend of an ultimate reality, unity, and diversity of ego. Very important. The self is diverse. It's not one like Atma or like that. Modern science is the echoing of the Buddhist doctrines of transitoriness, anicca, and of egolessness, anatta. So this is what Professor Ranjan Rai is commenting here in terms of the scientific changes that have been unleashed, and particularly the study of the matter, the atoms, the particles, and coming to the position where that the matter is being annihilated at every instant, isn't it? And the Buddha had talked about upajitva nirujjati, arise and passes away, arise and passes away. So this is what Professor Ranjan Roy is saying. Now we move on to what Mr. E.G. Taylor in his Buddhism and Modern Thought says. Man has been ruled by external authority long enough. If he is to be truly civilized, he must learn to be ruled by his own principles. Buddhism is the earliest ethical system where man is called upon to have himself governed by himself. Very important word. The humanity even today is governed by the fictitious gods, or fairies or angels, or so on and so forth. Relying on other agencies, the external agencies. But what E.G. Taylor is saying is that Buddhism is the earliest ethical system where man is called upon to have himself governed by himself. So if we want to govern ourselves, the only way we can do is by our own selves. Therefore, a progressive world needs Buddhism to teach it the supreme lesson. What is the supreme lesson? The responsibility lies on our own shoulders. That is the supreme lesson of Buddhism. So the progressive world needs Buddhism to teach it this supreme lesson. The Reverend Leslie Bolton, Unitarian minister, says, I see in the spiritual psychology of Buddhism its most powerful contribution. The word spiritual doesn't occur in the Buddha and his Dhamma, and in terms of Dhamma. But here, what is this Christian ministry saying? I see in the spiritual psychology of Buddhism its most powerful contribution. Unitarian Christians, like Buddhists, reject the external authority of church, books, or creeds, and find in man himself the guiding light. So that's, he compares with his own denomination, the Unitarian Christian denomination, where they rely on their own self. So man himself, the guiding light. Unitarians see in Jesus and Gautama noble exponents of the way of life. So the Buddhism is nothing but the noble exponent, of the way of life. Professor Dwight Goddard, whose Buddhist Bible was a very important book in the possession of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and very profound book Professor Dwight Goddard has written, has been a very influential book in the Western Buddhism. And what he says, among the world's religious teachers, Buddha alone has the glory of having rightly judged the intrinsic greatness of man's capacity to work out his salvation without extraneous aid. Very profound words, very important words. For our own to become great, we don't need help from outside. We have the capacity to work out our own freedom, our own salvation. If the worth of a truly great man consists in his raising the worth of all mankind, who is better entitled to be called truly great than the Blessed One? So Professor Dwight Goddard is saying that the Buddha has raised the worth of a man, isn't it? He gave the dignity to the mankind. And, that's what the Buddha did. Who, instead of degrading him by placing another being above him, has exalted him to the highest pinnacle of wisdom and love. So he's the man who is raised above, raised to the Godhood itself. So 48, Mr. E.J. Mills, author of Buddhism, says, in no other religion are values of knowledge and evil of ignorance so much insisted upon as they are in Buddhism. No other religion lays so much stress upon keeping one's eyes open. You see, all these things are pointing out to something important, that, the ultimate responsibility for the growth of the humanity and oneself lies on our own shoulders. It doesn't lie on the shoulders of any external agency. And that's what time and again has been repeated here in the Epilogue. No other religion lays so much stress upon keeping one's eyes open. No other religion has formulated such deep laid plans for mental culture. So Buddhism is the deep laid plan for the mental culture. You cannot find it out anywhere in any religion. Professor W.T. Stace says in his Buddhist Ethics, the Buddhist moral ideal, the Arhat, had to be both morally and intellectually great. It's not enough to be morally great. One has to be intellectually great as well. He had to be a philosopher as well as man of good conduct. Knowledge was always traced by Buddhism as essential to salvation. and ignorance as the source, one of the two main source causes of failure to attain, craving or attachment being the other. On the contrary, knowledge has never been any part of the Christian ideal man. Owing to the unphilosophical character of its founder in the Christian scheme of thought, the moral side of man has been diverged from the intellectual side. Very profound comment by W.T. Stace. Far more of the world's misery is caused by stupidity and blind faith than by wickedness. The Buddha did not allow this. Enough unto this to show how great and how unique is the Buddha and his Dhamma. Who would not say, let such a one be our master? So you see this epilogue and the comments by a lot of these agencies have been telling us that it's very important for us to understand how we have to look at Buddhism, why Buddhism needs to be studied, why Buddhism needs to be looked at from all this perspective. Okay. This is very important for when we come to the end of the Buddha and his Dhamma, we begin to understand the importance of the 8 books in terms of how it opens up our mind to our own minds and makes us take the responsibility onto ourselves to make a progress. For the humanity to progress, the responsibility lies not on the shoulders of other being or God or any external agencies. It lies on our shoulders. So I will take a pause here, and then we will discuss further on this. Now today, when we look at the Buddha Dhamma, and there are a lot of people, but it is said that the Buddhism is the religion that has been seeing so many books every day. There is not a single day is passed when something on Buddhism is not written or the book is not published. So the Buddhism has is the largest represented religion, as it were, in the internet. All the Tipitakas, all the sutras, so many things, videos and all available on Buddhism. And that's what shows that there is so much that people can express, an individual can express about Buddhism, because they don't have to always go by the books. They can go by their experiences. They can rely on their own experiences and realize the truth by themselves. And that's what makes Buddhism very special. And as the time passes, we are going to see more and more of people relating to Buddhism in the scientific domain, in all different areas of knowledge. So last 50 years have brought remarkable change in what is called the Buddhist studies. But these examples have been given by Babasaheb Ambedkar of those contemporary writers to show, what is Buddhism all about. So anything?
So,
Yeah. Dhara?
yes, Dhara.
Sir, in science, they say until proven wrong, so nothing is final. So we can see the anicca working here. So anything can be proven wrong, and anything is can be wrong. And so it is with sync with Buddhism.
You see, it's not question of right or wrong, Dhara. It's question of what is wholesome and unwholesome. So the Buddha talked in terms of what is samma and what is mithya, isn't it? What is harmonious and what is not harmonious. So there are certain things that have been proved by time and again that they are not subjected to what is called the let's put it the words. There are some laws and principles, like the Buddha talked about the Sanatan Dharma in terms of nahi verena verani sammati chakotachanam. So you cannot fight the hatred with the hatred. If you want to destroy the hatred, the only way to do it with non-hatred. So the same applies. This applies everywhere. For example, the 2 gathas of the Buddha and Dhamma, the Dhammapada. Manopubangama Dhamma, Manosetta Manomaya, Mansache Paduthena. So if we act with or with a defiled mind, or if we speak with the defiled mind, it's going to lead to the miseries, right? So there are certain principles which stand still, like the principle of anicca, that nothing is permanent. Doesn't mean that there is there are not structures which can enable us to lead us to the destruction of suffering. And that's what is the beauty of the Buddhism. The Buddhist scriptures, they are open, and they are subjected to criticism, and they are subjected to revision. But what is remarkable about the Buddhist scriptures is this, that it's not something that preaches you to do this and that only. It also provides you the methods. And those methods, if we follow, are definitely going to lead to the end of the suffering, to the real understanding of how the way it is, to the understanding that there is no substantial self. So when I talk about the substantial self or self, it just might be a game of the words, and I might not be knowing what exactly is, no understanding the anatta. And therefore, this relational aspect of the truth that the Buddha talked about is very beautifully expounded in the word called sankhara. And sankhara is nothing but the dependent origination, depending things, creating together. Kara means to make, san means together. And there is nothing in the world which can be made by itself. And everything is because of the permutation and combination. There are specific combinations. And when we are talking about, the vijnana or consciousness, as we talk in Buddhist terms, it's also, paticca samuppanna. It comes into being because of the relational reality. And we know that one thing is related to another. That means, the inherent law of impermanence is inbuilt into that, isn't it? The relational means impermanence, and impermanence means lack of any essential thing, means anatta. So, this is how, when we understand these principles like sankhara, and is there any state beyond sankhara? Yes, asankhara. So there are two kinds of realities, sankhat and asankhat. So sankhat means conditioned, relational. And when we realize this reality of sankhara or paticca samutpada, then we know that we attain to nibbana, because we have broken this cycle, this sankhara, this relational reality. Now, how does that happen? Has been very beautifully described in the Buddhist. So my point here is that, if we take this attitude of that everything is permanent, impermanent, it's true. But what we need to do is we also have to, understand certain methods. Like in the science, when we reach to certain laws, there are certain methods. And I would think that, we have to look at Buddhism as not, infallible, of course not. But we have to, give it a chance to work it out within ourselves. So I was reading something very beautiful in terms of the language, which is called the vitarka and vichar. This is the aspect of language, because without vitarka and vichar, you cannot speak. And the Dhamma is described as atakavacharo, beyond, the vitarka and vichar. Now, the implication of this is that when, we cannot talk about the Buddha or experience of the enlightenment in terms of the words or language, because it cannot be captured into that. So what we need to do is to hold on to the truth. And to hold on to the truth is a very beautiful word that has been later, is corrupted. Saddha. Sad means truth, and dha means to hold. It's a beautiful Pali word that has got a very, like many Buddhist word, has got very many negative connotations. So holding on to the truth together. Now, how do we hold on to the truth is by our own experience. So we know that this thing leads to happiness, this thing leads to suffering. Or the better still, have a faith in the enlightened teacher. Have a saddha in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Have the saddha in one's own good doings. So what I'm trying to get it at is, everything is impermanent, is good. It's true. But also there is an underlying reality that everything is relational, isn't it? And we have to understand this relationality, paticca samutpada. maybe not in the world, within our own world, that is called our own body and mind, right? So the inquiry or the method that the Buddha taught is to look within and understand the nature of your mind and body, right? So very important sort of a things to study Buddhism, not just because we hear a lot about everything is impermanent, everything is impermanent, everything is impermanent. The Baba Ambedkar doesn't talk that way, isn't it? Buddha doesn't talk that way. He talks about sabbe sankhara anicca, then they go on sabbe sankhara anatta, sabbe sankhara dukkha, and then sabbe dhamma anatta, isn't it? So when we talk about the impermanence, we have to talk in terms of the anatta. We have to talk in terms of how this anatta, these things produce the dukkha. Anicchata produce dukkha, sankhara dukkha. So I'm not, I don't want to digress from here, but all I want to bring to your notice is that we have, as it is clear in the epilogue, Baba Ambedkar has brought these quotations from so many people to prove the point that the ultimate responsibility lies in our own hands, and the Buddha was the first to raise the man at a level of dignity, almost to the level of the God. So the Buddhism is of course subjected to inquiry, subjected to change, and Buddhism is not immune from the law of anicca, law of anatta, and the law of dukkha, and it needs continuous reconsideration, thinking. That's what Baba Ambedkar has been doing here in the Buddha and Dhamma. That's what we are supposed to do. Own the Buddha and Dhamma for our own progress, isn't it? Make that text live within ourselves, as M.B. Chitney says that the Buddha and Dhamma is the living mausoleum of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, isn't it? So I would look at the change in terms of as a way of studying even the Buddha and Dhamma, or the history of Buddhism. The history itself is a change, as Baba Ambedkar says. If we have to define history in one word, he says change would be the word. Anything, Dhara?
Yes, sir. The limitation of language you said. So there is one Rahim saying, Rahim man baat agamya ki kahani sunne ki nahi. So there is something we cannot express in language. There may be state of that which is far from language. And there is one book in neuroscience is phantoms in the brain. So if one person has lost a limb, so he still feel the connection with that limb.
Yeah.
So there is something we cannot know about mind, or human mind is potential of our human mind is not fully explored yet.
Yeah.
So
True. That's very true. Rahul bhai.
Yeah, I think that is what, in the same regard, the WT said regarding this arhat. That he is telling about the arhat is that morality and morally and intellectually great. So I think it is also related to the meditation as well. Actually, what we were discussing initially is that now in last 50 years there has been scientific experiments, and it has been calibrated what actually is happening inside the meditation. So if we are going to a particular meditation, then we can find there are four stages or four dhyanas are there. So in each dhyana, what are the waves are emerging out? There are waves like alpha, beta, and theta. So on first dhyana, what are the waves? And second dhyana, what are the waves? And third and fourth, what are and the patterns has been observed. So it is difficult to explain all these feelings in words. But what I wanted to point out in all these teachings, there is an important teaching is that unless and until you practice the Shila, you cannot attain to those things. Means how much intellectual you are, but without Shila, you cannot attain to these stages. And that's what I wanted to point out. Another thing is that almost all the authors pointed out Buddha's uh, important message, that is ethics and morality.
Yes.
So that is actually Baba Sahib also in the very book has said that the place of God has been replaced by the ethics and morality. So the thing I think this is the we can say this is a threat to the wrongdoers or the uh, false ideas, the false views, the religions which are based on these ideas. This is threat to them. That's why after passing the Baba Sahib, actually there was a violence emerged on the book that is called as the riddles in Hinduism. So what actually Baba Sahib wrote in that, the riddles in Hinduism and I think the 22s was are very much related to each other, because Baba Sahib Ambedkar has emphasized on why we should not worship. He named particular gods of a particular religion, and the reason he gave the ethics and morality, and that he means explained in detail in the riddles in
Yes.
book. People means were blaming that book, blaming the Ambedkar, but till today, no one is able to counter or erase the means whatever Baba Sahib has criticized. They are not able to still do that thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
So that's how much important is the ethics and morality. This is the foundation stone
Yeah.
of the Buddhism, and everyone is commenting on that only.
Yes. Very beautifully said, Rahul. One of the exercises for some of the people out here will be to collect what has all happened after 1956, because there is so much, as Rahul was saying, that so many things are going on in the laboratories, in understanding Buddhism, in understanding Buddhism and language, and Buddhism and politics. So many things are emerging and have emerged, and so many great people have commented on the Buddha's Dhamma. So I think it will be very good idea to collect those sort of comments by the people, talking about how Buddhism is in accord with the growth of a human being. And I think that would be a wonderful exercise, right? Yes, Alka ma'am.
In the prologue of the Buddha and his Dhamma, it is stated that with the rapid progress of scientific knowledge and thought, and widespread tendency in all parts of the world to reform and reconstruct religion or replace it by a religion which is more rational and scientific, in which there is no superstition and supernaturalism. So this prologue is very important, and it totally summarizes how rational and scientific Buddha's Dhamma is, and how it gives there is no place for superstition and supernaturalism, and only morality. And scientific way, it shows the idea of the impermanence, anicca, and anatta, by his theory of nam rupa, and the impermanence in self and in the universe. The elements present in the body itself, they are present in the universe also, and there is impermanence in these elements, atoms and subatomic particles.
Good. Very good. Excellent. So, anybody has anything to say?
Sir, I have few reflections. What means person or a human born, means when born, it assumed to be in a pure state, though it not having so much consciousness as he grows. The Buddhism is the way to attain that purity. Means to attain that higher conditioning, means that we are born with. And there are very simple ways, means only 4 noble truths and 8 folded paths. By following all this, we can align ourselves in a natural way to our natural state.
Right.
From the distraction, from the worldly distraction regarding the behavior, regarding the thinking, regarding the living habits, regarding the food habits. That's why Buddhism is the so simple and easiest way to attain the higher conditioning through human efforts. Nothing miracle needed there. And no such rituals are to be followed.
Yes.
And costly affairs and costly blindfolding methodologies are to be followed.
Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. Very nicely said. You see, there is a in Buddhism, in Buddhist text, you said that Thanapo means one who is on the mother, feeding on the mother's milk, has no identity formation. So they do not have what is called identity consciousness, which we have, and we are so trying to defend our identities all the time. So, this state of Arhat and the mind of the Arhat is equated with that of a babe, as we have seen in the previous classes on the Buddhism. But the only difference is that the child is not aware of their innocence, but the Arhat is aware that he has awakened to that, or he has reached to that state of this profound purity of mind, that we when we hold a child, we encounter profound innocence, right, and profound purity, and it ultimately gladdens our mind if we encounter a small child. So you are right, and Buddhism has this very, as it said here by one of the commentators on the Buddhism, it's what is it? It's very beautifully said here, no? Such deep laid plans for mental culture. So the Buddhism has formulated deep laid plans for mental culture. So when you look at the Buddha's Dhamma, we have to look at it as a path or a plan to build the mental culture, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Everything relates to our thinking.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. Great. Anybody has anything to say? Vidya, Sunil sir, Rahul Baya?
Just one word.
Baby
Sorry.
has no prajna, and Arhat, and they have prajna, wisdom. That is difference.
Yes, Rahul Bhai.
Yeah, this once a couple of words. It's salvation without extraneous aid. Means whatever salvation we are expecting, that we are getting to this fathom body, this 6-foot body. Everything lies inside that. We don't need any extraneous aid.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. So let's meet next week to study a vow to spread his Dhamma, the 4 verses, but very profound, very important. And then we will meet one more time to study a prayer for his return to his land. So meanwhile, goodbye and Jai Bhim Namo Buddhaya.
Jai Bhim, Namo
Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Jai Bhim.